The clink of glasses echoed in the grand dining hall. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in golden light. Guests in glittering gowns and sharp tuxedos whispered, laughed, and toasted. But in the middle of the celebration, the mighty Korean CEO, Jin-Woo Park, froze. His hand trembled as he lifted a glass of red wine. For a second, he thought it was just exhaustion. But when he glanced across the table, he caught a smirk, a quick, dark smile, on the face of one of his trusted business partners. His gut twisted. Something was wrong. The glass slipped from his hand, shattering across the marble floor. Gasps filled the air. Assistants rushed forward. But Jinwoo's sharp eyes never left the man who had smiled at his weakness. Someone in this room wanted him dead. Hours earlier, Jin-Woo had been in his office, far away from the noise and glamour. Seoul's night skyline glittered through the glass walls behind him, but he hardly noticed. He never noticed. His life was work, spreadsheets, contracts, hostile takeovers. At 32, Jin-Woo Park was already a legend in Korea's corporate world. The son of a poor fisherman, he had built his empire with ruthless determination. He had no time for family, friends, or even love. To him, emotions were weaknesses. He had trained himself to live cold, sharp, and untouchable. But even legends have cracks. The investors he desperately needed for his new global expansion had one demand: stability. A man with no woman by his side was, to them, a risk. Rumors spread. He's heartless. He can't commit. He's too cold to be trusted. For the first time in his career, Jin-Woo faced a problem money alone couldn't fix. He didn't need love, but he needed the image of it. So he made the coldest, strangest decision of his life. He would hire a girlfriend. That was how Imani Carter entered his world. Their first meeting was in his office, under the watchful eyes of his assistants. Imani walked in, her chin lifted, her steps calm and powerful. She wore a simple navy dress, her braids tied back, her deep brown skin glowing under the soft lights. She was breathtaking, but it wasn't just her beauty. It was her presence. Most women trembled when they faced Jin-Woo Park. Not Imani. She met his icy gaze with eyes that seemed to say, "I see right through you." "Mr. Park," she began, her voice smooth but firm, "I understand you don't want a girlfriend. You want a contract. But let me make one thing clear. I don't sell my dignity. If you want me to play this role, you will respect me. No insults. No control games. No humiliation." Jin-Woo tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. He was used to people begging for his approval, not setting boundaries. "This is business," he said flatly, sliding a folder toward her. "Appear with me at events. Smile. Hold my hand. Convince the world we are in love. In return, you will be compensated generously." Imani glanced at the folder, then leaned back in her chair. "Money is not my problem, Mr. Park. What you're really asking for is trust. You want someone who won't embarrass you, someone who won't fall apart under pressure. Lucky for you, I know how to survive in toxic places." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then, for the first time in months, Jinwoo's lips curved into the faintest ghost of a smile. Within days, their story became a sensation. The icy CEO and his mysterious girlfriend. They appeared hand in hand at a charity gala, and the cameras went wild. Imani dazzled in a silver gown, her radiant smile stealing the spotlight. Headlines screamed, "Who is the Black Queen beside Jin-Woo Park?" Investors softened. Partnerships flowed more smoothly. Everyone believed their act. But behind the cameras, things weren't simple. Imani quickly realized Jinwoo's world was not glamorous. It was poisonous. At every party, she could feel the envy, the sharp eyes of women who wished they were in her place, the whispers of business rivals plotting his downfall. She could even sense how his own employees feared him, some pretending to be loyal while secretly waiting for him to fail. And then there was Jin-Woo himself, cold, rigid, obsessed with control. In public, he played the role of the perfect gentleman, guiding her with a hand on her back, whispering sweet lies into her ear for the sake of cameras. But once the lights were off, he withdrew into his silence, his loneliness heavy in the air. Still, Imani was not afraid of him. Instead, she studied him. She noticed the way his jaw clenched when someone mentioned his father, the rare flicker of pain when he thought no one was watching. She saw through his armor. One night, as their car drove through the city after yet another exhausting gala, Imani finally spoke. "You think money makes you untouchable," she said softly, her gaze on the neon lights rushing past the window. "But it doesn't. You're surrounded by people who smile in your face and pray for your downfall. And you don't trust anyone. Do you?" Jinwoo didn't answer. His face was turned to the glass, his reflection cold. But her words stayed with him long after she stopped speaking. He had hired her to be his mask. Yet somehow she was already peeling his own away. What neither of them knew was that this fake contract was about to be tested in ways neither expected. Because someone, somewhere in his circle, wasn't just after Jinwoo's empire. They were after his life. And before long, Imani would be the only thing standing between him and destruction. The cameras loved them. Everywhere they went, flashes followed at charity balls, luxury brand launches, award dinners. Jinwoo Park, the untouchable CEO, and Imani Carter, the mysterious beauty who had somehow captured his heart. To the public, they were perfection. "Look at them," a journalist whispered at one gala, snapping pictures as Jinwoo pulled out a chair for Imani. "They're like a fairy tale." But behind the scenes, the fairy tale was fragile. The moment the cameras switched off, Jinwoo's mask slipped back on. He became distant, stiff, and cold. Imani would slip off her heels in the back of the limousine and sigh, trying to shake off the weight of fake smiles, only to be met with his silence. "This isn't love," she once muttered under her breath after an event, staring at the Seoul skyline rushing past the tinted windows. "It's not supposed to be," Jinwoo replied sharply. "It's business. Don't forget that." His words cut, but she refused to show it. Still, the world refused to believe their act was fake. Investors became friendlier, competitors grudgingly respectful. Jinwoo was finally getting everything he wanted. Yet, strangely, the more he gained in business, the more restless he became inside. Because Imani wasn't just playing the role. She was becoming impossible to ignore. At dinners, she didn't just sit pretty. She challenged arrogant businessmen with clever questions. She noticed things he never did. Like when one investor slipped a powdery substance into a wine glass meant for Jinwoo, or when a rival CEO tried to corner him into a bad deal. Imani wasn't afraid of his world. She walked into every room like she belonged there, like no one's wealth or status could shake her. That both infuriated him and drew him closer. One night, at a lavish rooftop party overlooking the city, the drama began. Imani was mingling near the buffet when a woman approached her. She was tall, slim, dressed in a gown dripping with diamonds. Her smile was sharp as a blade. "You must be Imani," she said, her tone dripping with fake sweetness. "I'm Sujin. Jinwoo and I have known each other for years." Imani raised a brow. "Good for you." Sujin stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You're beautiful, I'll admit, but you don't belong here. You think this is love? It's not. You're just his latest project. Toy. Do yourself a favor and leave before you're embarrassed." Imani's jaw tightened, but she forced a smile. "Funny. He didn't introduce you as anyone important. Must have slipped his mind." Sujin's smile faltered, and for the first time, her eyes flickered with rage. Jinwoo arrived just then, his hand brushing against Imani's as if to steady her. "Is there a problem?" His voice was calm, but the steel in it made Sujin retreat with a stiff laugh. Imani's heart thudded. For a moment it felt real, the way he stood protectively beside her, the way his hand lingered just a second too long. But when they were alone, his coldness returned. "Don't let people like her get under your skin. You're here to play a role, not pick fights." Her eyes burned. "Maybe if you weren't surrounded by snakes, I wouldn't have to fight." For the first time, his icy mask cracked. He turned, staring at her as if seeing her differently. "You see too much," he muttered. The real test came later that night. At the rooftop bar, a waiter approached Imani with a glass of champagne. She reached for it without thinking, until Jinwoo's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. "Don't drink that," he said sharply. Confused, she looked up. His eyes were locked on the waiter, who was trying too hard to disappear into the crowd. Jinwoo snatched the glass, his instincts screaming. He had seen too many betrayals to ignore one now. Without a word, he set the glass aside and pulled Imani close to him, his arm firm around her waist. Her breath caught. For the first time, he wasn't just pretending to touch her. This was different, protective, real. "Stay by my side," he whispered. His voice was low, urgent. For the rest of the night, he barely let her out of his sight. Later, as they rode home in silence, Imani finally broke it. "They weren't trying to hurt me, were they?" Jinwoo's jaw clenched. His hands tightened into fists on his knees. "They were trying to get to me," he admitted, his voice low. "And you were the closest target." Imani shivered, realizing for the first time just how dangerous his world was. This wasn't just about fake smiles and fake love. This was survival. And deep down, Jinwoo realized something terrifying. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just afraid for his empire. He was afraid of losing her. The banquet hall glittered with wealth. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above. Violins played softly in the corner. And businessmen clinked glasses over deals worth billions. But beneath the laughter and smiles, a storm was brewing. Imani sat beside Jinwoo at the head table, her gown a flowing emerald that made her look like a queen. She had learned the rhythm of his world, the fake smiles, the careful words, the endless eyes watching them. To everyone else, she looked like the perfect girlfriend of the perfect CEO. But inside, her heart was restless. Something about tonight felt wrong. The way certain men kept whispering behind their napkins. The way Sujin's eyes followed her like daggers. The way one of Jinwoo's senior partners, Mr. Han, kept forcing glasses of wine toward him. "Drink, Jinwoo," Mr. Han urged with a smile too wide. "Tonight we celebrate." Jinwoo raised the glass, but Imani's hand shot out, gently touching his wrist. "Maybe you've had enough," she said softly, her eyes searching his. It was just a simple touch, a whisper of concern, but it startled him. Very few people had ever dared to protect him, not even his family. He lowered the glass slowly, his eyes narrowing at Mr. Han, who quickly looked away. Something wasn't right. Later that evening, when the room was louder and people were distracted, Imani slipped away to find some air. She moved through the dimly lit corridor behind the kitchen, heels clicking softly on the floor. And that was when she heard it. Two men whispering in Korean, their voices sharp. "Did you put it in his drink?" one hissed. "Yes, the red wine. By now, he should have taken it. By morning, everyone will think it was stress, exhaustion, a natural death." Imani froze, her heart pounding. Her breath caught in her throat. They were talking about Jinwoo. She pressed herself against the wall, praying they wouldn't see her. When their footsteps faded, she stumbled back toward the hall, panic surging through her veins. When she returned, Jinwoo was raising another glass, the same red wine. Everyone around the table was cheering, urging him to toast. "Stop!" Imani cried, louder than she meant to. The room fell silent. Every eye turned toward her. Her hand trembled, but she forced herself forward, standing between Jinwoo and the glass. "Don't drink it." A ripple of shock spread across the room. Some guests whispered, others laughed nervously. Sujin smirked. Mr. Han's face turned pale. Jinwoo's jaw tightened. He leaned closer to her, his voice cold and controlled. "Imani, you're making a scene." Her eyes burned with desperation. "Please, trust me." For a long, heavy moment, he stared at her. Then, to everyone's shock, he set the glass down untouched. The celebration carried on, but Jinwoo didn't smile. He watched her closely, his mind racing. She had seen something. She knew something. That night, as their car cut through the silent city streets, Jinwoo finally asked, his voice low and dangerous, "What did you hear?" Imani swallowed hard, her fingers tightening on her lap. "They were talking about poisoning you." "It wasn't a joke, Jinwoo. Someone at that table wants you dead." For once, his mask cracked. His eyes darkened, not with coldness, but with fear. Not for himself, for her. "You shouldn't have interfered," he said hoarsely. Now they'll come after you too. Her heart skipped. Then let them. I'd rather fight with you than watch you die. The silence that followed was heavy, charged with something neither of them wanted to admit. But the danger wasn't over. The next evening, Jinwoo had another dinner with key investors, and Imani insisted on coming. She wore a crimson dress that turned heads, her beauty enough to disarm anyone. But beneath her calm exterior, she was alert, her eyes scanning every move, every drink poured. Halfway through the night, it happened again. A waiter slipped something into a glass, subtle, quick, but not quick enough for her sharp eyes. Before Jinwoo could lift it, Imani moved. With a steady smile, she picked up the glass herself. "To success," she said boldly, and drank it before anyone could stop her. The room erupted in claps and laughter, everyone believing it was a playful toast. No one saw the flicker of panic in Jinwoo's eyes. Minutes later, as the dinner carried on, Imani's smile faltered. Her chest tightened. The room spun. The glass slipped from her hand. "Imani!" Jinwoo's voice was raw, desperate, nothing like his usual calm. He caught her as she collapsed, cradling her in his arms. The hall exploded in chaos, but he didn't care. He scooped her up, ignoring the shocked gasps, and stormed out of the room. At the hospital, machines beeped softly as doctors worked. Jinwoo sat outside, his hands buried in his hair, his chest heavy with guilt. For the first time in years, he felt helpless. He could buy buildings, silence scandals, crush enemies, but he couldn't control this. He couldn't control the thought of losing her. When the doctor finally came out and said, "She'll survive, but she needs rest," Jinwoo's shoulders sagged with relief. He entered the room quietly. Imani was pale, her breathing slow, but her eyes fluttered open when she felt his presence. "You're safe," she whispered weakly. Jinwoo sank to his knees beside her bed, his voice breaking. "Why would you do that? Why would you risk your life for me?" Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Because someone has to protect you, even from yourself." For the first time, Jinwoo Park, the man the world called heartless, felt his chest ache with something deeper than power or money. And as he held her fragile hand in his, he realized something terrifying. He didn't just need her for business. He needed her to live. The hospital room was silent except for the steady beeping of the heart monitor. Jinwoo sat at Imani's bedside, his once perfect suit wrinkled, his tie loosened, his eyes shadowed from sleepless nights. For days, he had barely left her side. Every time she stirred, every time she whispered his name, it reminded him how close he had come to losing her, and that realization changed him. For the first time in his 32 years, Jinwoo Park was afraid. Not of rivals, not of failure, but of a world without Imani. When Imani was strong enough to sit up, she took his hand, her voice soft but steady. "Jinwoo, they won't stop. As long as you pretend you don't see them, they'll keep coming." His jaw tightened. "I know who's behind it." "Then stop them," she whispered. "Not for your empire, for you, for us." It was the first time either of them had spoken of us. The word hung between them, fragile and real. 2 weeks later, the final showdown began. Jinwoo invited all his major partners, board members, and investors to a grand conference at one of his hotels. The hall was massive, cameras everywhere, journalists waiting to catch every word. The betrayers didn't know that this time, Jinwoo and Imani were ready. As the meeting began, Jinwoo stood tall in his black suit, but his usual coldness was gone. His eyes burned with purpose. Imani sat at the front, poised and elegant, watching the crowd with sharp eyes. "Tonight," Jinwoo began, his voice echoing across the hall, "we discuss more than business. Tonight, we discuss loyalty." A murmur rippled through the crowd. He pressed a button on the remote, and a large screen lit up. Hidden camera footage began to play. Recordings of Mr. Han and Sujin whispering in corners, passing envelopes, instructing waiters to slip poison into drinks. The evidence was undeniable. Gasps filled the room. Sujin's face drained of color. Mr. Han stammered, but security was already moving in. "You thought you could poison me and take what I built?" Jinwoo said, his voice sharp as steel. But you underestimated one thing. He glanced at Amani. You underestimated her. The room fell silent as cameras turned, capturing the black woman who had become his shield, his partner, his unexpected strength. Amani stood slowly, her voice calm but powerful. You all thought Jinwoo was alone, that he had no one to stand by him. But the truth is, he has someone now. And as long as I live, no one will destroy him. The hall erupted in whispers, the journalists scribbling furiously. The betrayers were dragged out, but the drama didn't end there. As the crowd dispersed, a desperate Sujin lunged forward, pulling a small knife from her purse. Her eyes were wild. If I can't have him, no one can, she screamed, charging toward Amani. The world slowed. Gasps filled the air. Security scrambled. But Jinwoo moved first. He stepped in front of Amani, his body shielding hers, and caught Sujin's wrist with brutal strength. The knife clattered to the floor. His voice was low, shaking with fury. Touch her again, and I'll destroy you. Security dragged Sujin away as she screamed, but Jinwoo didn't move. He turned, his hands trembling, and cupped Amani's face. Are you hurt? His voice broke. Amani shook her head, her eyes wide. You protected me. For a moment, they just stared at each other. The CEO who once thought love was weakness was holding the woman who had risked her life for him, and nothing else in the world mattered. That night, when the hall was empty and the city lights glowed outside, Jinwoo finally spoke the words he had never imagined saying. This started as a contract, he said softly, standing before her. Business. Pretend. But somewhere along the way, I stopped pretending. You changed me, Imani. You showed me a world beyond power, beyond money. And now, I can't imagine a life without you. Imani's breath caught. Her heart raced. For once, Jinwoo's eyes weren't cold. They were vulnerable, honest. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box, and opened it to reveal a diamond ring that sparkled like fire. There is no contract anymore, he said. Only this. Marry me not for business, not for appearances, but because I love you. Tears welled in her eyes as she pressed a hand to her mouth. Jinwoo, the man the world thought incapable of love, was kneeling before her, his heart laid bare. Yes, she whispered, her voice shaking with joy. Yes, I'll marry you. He slipped the ring on her finger, and for the first time they kissed. Not for cameras, not for investors, but for themselves. A kiss full of passion, pain, and promise. News of the engagement spread like wildfire. The headlines screamed, Cold CEO melts. Jinwoo Park proposes to mysterious girlfriend. The woman who changed Korea's richest man. The same rivals who mocked her now envied her. The same board members who doubted him now applauded. But for Jinwoo and Imani, none of it mattered. Because in the end, it wasn't the money, the power, or the empire that won. It was the love they swore was fake. The love that grew in the cracks of betrayal and poison. The love that no enemy could break. And as they stood together, hand in hand,
Hello, besties.
looking
In
out at the
this
glittering
story, we
Seoul
learned that
skyline,
true love is never about
Jinwoo
wealth,
whispered
power,
the
or
truth he
appearance.
once
It's
denied.
about the courage
You
to
saved
trust,
me,
to heal,
Imani,
and to stand
not
together
just from
against the
them,
world.
but from
Even
myself.
the richest,
She
coldest
smiled,
hearts can be softened
leaning
by the
into
right
him.
person.
And
And
you
even the
saved me
most
too.
underestimated soul
Together,
can
they
rise to
finally
protect and
had what
inspire
money could never
greatness.
buy,
No
real
matter how
love.
toxic the environment or how many try to tear it apart, love built on respect, honesty, and sacrifice will always outshine greed, lies, and betrayal. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly like, subscribe, and share.